What I'm about to talk about in today's video might make you very uncomfortable. You see, from 2018 to 2021, I was making between 80 to 150 grand profit in my info business every single month. I had the lifestyle, I had the team, I had the success stories. By pretty much every single metric, I was succeeding, I was a success. But here is the cold hard truth that a lot of people in the info space just don't want to come to terms with. And that is that I was living in a prison. Yes, granted, a very fancy prison with a lot of amenities, but nonetheless, it was still a prison. And maybe some of this resonates for you. If you're making 20K a month and you're actually looking to scale up in the info, coaching, consulting space, if you're making anywhere from like 20 to 150 grand a month, you'll probably want to listen to this video because you might be building yourself the same prison that I was building myself. So with that being said, let me take you back to 2021. This is really like the last year that I was in this, plush, luxurious prison before I managed to finally break out of it in 2022. So what did 2021 look like? Every year, the info business was growing, steadily, no hockey growth stick, nothing crazy, but growing steadily. So I was making, from my recollection, about $2 million in 2021 for my info business. I had a small team of just 5 people, all the external markers for a thriving, healthy business. But here is what was actually going on behind the scenes. Every single month, I was working harder and harder and harder just to accomplish last quarter's results. It was like this horrible treadmill that actually kept getting quicker and quicker. It wasn't even like it was a normal treadmill where it's like, yeah, it's a lot of work, but the pace of it. It's like a treadmill that keeps getting faster and faster and faster. So it's like, I would come off the back of 150K a month in profit. And of course, that's all great. Is living in UAE. I mean, they recently introduced 9% tax, but back then, no tax, all net, tax-free, all this stuff. Like, that's great. But then I would just have to work even harder to accomplish the same thing. And I would immediately start stressing out about the next month and the next month and the next month. And the problem was that the business was completely dependent on me. I was the crux. I was the issue. I was the bottleneck for every part of the business. And by the way, I also don't believe in this whole BS I see online of like, you have to remove yourself all the way from your info business. Like, I actually think that ruins a lot of info businesses. Like, you still want to be involved in places you're impactful and in the places no one can replace you. And there are some core places that is applicable in the info space. But that wasn't applicable to me back then. I had no process, I had no systems, I had no structure, I had no framework that I was following. Like, it was just like, I was the business. But here's the truly insidious part about making good money in the info, coaching, consulting space. And I see it time and time again. What happens is a lot of people will create a lifestyle that requires money. So by the way, that doesn't even mean on their personal life. I see it a lot of times even with team expenses. Like, they'll bloat their company expenses. Like, whether you're bloating your personal expenses by buying a bunch of stuff that you don't need too prematurely. And I know a lot of people look at me and they're like, oh yeah, well, you have a crazy lifestyle. It's like, yeah, but I also bought my first car by the time I'd made multiple 8 figures. And people will be like, oh, he has fancy watches. It's like, yeah, well, I buy a watch like this for 140,000 pounds and I walk out the store and it's worth 350,000. Like, my watches, like, in the most respectful way possible, all the millions I've spent on my watches, I've probably made more from my watches than most people have made from their property investments. So trust me, I've been very smart with this game. And unfortunately, I don't see a lot of people be smart with it. So what they do is they bloat their team expenses, they bloat their personal expenses. And what happens is then you become trapped by your own success. You're making too much to quit, but not enough to truly be free. And I remember for me what my breaking point was. My breaking point was December 2021. We had a horrible month. I mean, December is always a pretty bad month, especially if you don't plan for it correctly in info. And I'm looking at the numbers for 2021, and we were only up 20%. I mean, listen, that's still great, 20% growth in a company from the year before, but it was like 20% growth, but like 100% increase in effort. So it's like, yeah, sure. Like, listen, it's great if your business grows 20%, but then also the amount of like sacrifice and effort and mental bandwidth and stress and blah, blah, that only goes up by 20% because like that's a fair, equal exchange of value. But like, when your business only grows like this, but your stress and everything else goes like this, it's like, at a certain point, you have to question, like, am I just going to keep going down this path, or am I going to start playing things differently and start playing a smarter game? So in today's video, I'm going to give you the no BS conversations and realizations that I've had to make over the space of the last 3-4 years to, make sure that my info business is growing year on year on year in profit. The first massive change I had to make to get out of this prison was team. And I know, like, that's like no Sherlock. But like, trust me, it's so much more important than you could ever realize. And what I see is a lot of times people will go to, hire a X executive at this company or hire a yada yada, like in these industries that just don't apply to the info space. Like the info space, it's such a unique and it's such an early market where, for example, for me, like I won't say the name of the exact company, but there's an e-learning space generally in the market, like they've had almost $500 million in funding, and credit to them, they're worth, a couple $billion or whatever their last round was at. They have still yet to hit self-sustainability, aka they've still been yet to be profitable. Now, if the CEO of that company, now I don't know how much he earns, these are all speculations, but the point is, if the CEO of that company offered to forfeit his crazy salary and come work at our business, even though this is the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar e-learning business, I would decline respectfully, because that's a very different way of running your business than we run our profitable. For me in the info space, the number one focus should be cash flow, profitability. Now, prior to that, the number one focus should be just making your product as good as humanly possible for your customers. I mean, even recently, I acquired a massive company. This company did almost $80 million in revenue in its history. And I literally bought this company so that way I could take the products and give it to my customers for free as an added bonus, and just to make our products even better. I mean, at some point, we literally had 6 one-on-one coaching calls. I don't even know if people talk about this. So much in my businesses that I just don't talk about enough, and whatever, that's my fault. I really should do. On our $1,500 product, by the way, I'm not recommending you do this, but this is just how insane we are. On our $1,500 product, I believe it was close to about a team of 20 SSC, student success concierge, so basically coaches. On a $1,500 product, you realize how insane that is to have 6 weeks of one-on-one coaching with 6 one-on-one calls with, support whenever you want, on top of the pre-existing multiple courses, 10 coaching calls a week, all this stuff. So for me, your number one focus should be obviously making your product as good as humanly possible while still not being irresponsible economically. But then after that, if you have a stellar and incredible product, then you want to focus on profitability. And I know I went on a bit of a tangent here, but the reason I say all this stuff is because your team is so important. Now, for me, info is one of those businesses where it's best to not go poach talent. It's better to find talent and then train them up. And that's what I've done over the year. Everyone in my company has kind of come in grassroots, and I've trained them up over the years. And listen, it's not just about hiring great talent, because the other thing you need to understand in our space, and this is very important in general, in the info space, you have a younger demographic, and you have a demographic that really wants to chop and change their career and their work schedule and this and that. I have a colleague I've worked with for 8 years now. That's insane. Granted, I think we had a 2-year sabbatical or 1.5 year sabbatical or something like that. But let's even look at my C-suite team. They've all been around 5 years, 4 years, 3 years. And that is very rare in the space to keep great talent around. And the only way you can do that is by culture and developing an incredible culture. So I can speak about this further in detail in another video. I just want to get my high level thoughts out. But really genuinely, when I think about how do you get out of the info prison where it's you just feel you have to do everything yourself. You got no support. You feel overwhelmed. It's team. And to me, team does not mean you go hire some ex-executive from this place or that place. It means that in our industry, and I have other businesses where I'm only looking for the most experienced people. But I just find in the info business, it's much better to find people who are in the earlier stages and grow with them. And then those people will then train new people that come in. And the glue that holds us all together is culture. Because I can tell you right now, keeping talent in the info space is notoriously difficult. As I said, because people are generally younger. We're also in this info space where people are frazzled. They're always getting, they're comparing their situation to other people's situations. It's such a fast moving, frenetic space that getting great talent, and for me, great talent all comes down to people's characteristics, not their skill set, because skill set can be trained up. Getting great talent of people who are disciplined, committed, head screwed on, and just love the work and just love growing it as a team. That's the biggest thing that you should celebrate. But your biggest moat, the thing that really just means you're good no matter what, is your team. And I truly mean that. I always say to my team, I don't know what we're going to be doing in 5 years, but I know that if we do it together, we will win. And I truly believe that. Now, the next realization that I really had to have myself in 2021 in order to really grow in 2022 and accomplish what we have in the last few years in the info space is thinking more long-term and thinking how can I build these competitive advantages? And what I mean by that is that in the info space, a lot of people are just thinking about next week, next month. They don't think further than that. They don't think about, okay, how can I build the competitive advantages to make sure that no one can beat me in my industry? And then also, how can I have this cash pile and then deploy it in the right way? Listen, if you're making money in the info real estate space, that money should be then taken and then all of that should be dumped into real estate. Or let's say you're in the gym info space, you should take that money and then go invest in D2C brands that are related to an industry. For me, I'm invested in so many businesses in the info space, a lot of which I actually don't even talk about, but that people use, not realizing that, okay, maybe for example, this software company, I've never disclosed it. I only own 0.5% or 3% or whatever it may be, but people are using it and not even realizing that I have interest in those companies. So always understand the info game is by far, and I say this hand on heart, I truly say this hand on heart, because I have all sorts of businesses. In my portfolio, I have software companies that are super profitable. I have software companies that literally lose money, but we play the VC games, so that it's a different sort of thing. I have physical product businesses, I have info business, like I have so many things in my portfolio that I can see there's no perfect business model, but I can tell you in terms of cash flow, the info business is the best cash flow business on earth. It's just, what are you going to use that cash flow for? And once you have this cash flow, how are you going to be smart about it? So whether that's reinvesting back into yourself and making yourself a media company, like in a sense, we're basically like a media empire because I've reinvested back in there. And then once I did that and I took it to the best place it can, going and either acquiring 100% of companies like I did, last week, or just investing in taking smaller chunks of businesses. I've said this before and I genuinely do believe it. I think from our space, the info space, we are going to have at least 10 billionaires by the end of the decade. But these are going to be the people that play things right and play things smart. So the second thing I really want you to take away from this video is, quite frankly, just think bigger. I feel like a lot of people in the info space, they come in and they get depressed and then they just dwindle. It's no, come in. Let's use our serious business owner brain. Let's actually build the competitive advantages and let's actually build moats. And then also with all this cash, let's do something smart with it and build an empire from it. And if you do that, as I said, I genuinely hand on heart believe that there will be 10 billionaires from our space by the end of the decade, but it's only gonna be the people who know how to play things right and play things smart. Now, this kind of bleeds into my third point, which is you have to play things smart. And in order to do that, you have to stop running an info business like it's some multi-billion-dollar corporation. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're not playing the startup game here. We're not playing the VC game here. It's unfortunate. I see this notion of sellable asset. And it's just guys, in info business, coming from someone who genuinely writes very large checks multiple times a year and invests in companies, some of which I've disclosed on my main channel or here, and some of which I don't disclose. I can tell you right now, for 99.999% of info businesses, it's not a sellable asset. And the issue is when you start trying to run it like this, now you're you have the worst of both worlds. You don't have a cash flow business, but you also aren't running it, but you also don't have a sellable asset business. It's the worst of both things. Info businesses aren't really meant to be sellable assets, but then if you try to Frankenstein it and twist it around to get a small multiple, it's you're not really getting the big off exits. So it's but then you're also trying to you're losing out on the cash flow, which is the whole point of this in the first place. It's to build cash flow and then deploy that cash flow in a smart way. So what I really want you to get away from this third realization that I had, I knew this already and I always ran my info business in a smart way, but it was only in 2021 that I thought about, I'm what other businesses? Because, the more and more time I spend with more business owners, the more I'm kind of grateful for info. And as I said, I genuinely think info is the greatest business model on earth because I'm wow, these businesses that you see are doing 30 million a year and whatnot. It's okay, that's top line. When you actually look at, and then even from their profit, a lot of times they have to reinvest those profits. So it's what can you actually take out of the business? What can you use? And then take that money and then deploy that here, deploy that there, write a check here, invest in this, invest in that. There's really not that much. There's really not that many businesses that can do that and they can afford that for you. So it was really in 2021 that I realized I have this incredible opportunity in front of me where I have a business that's so profitable, and if I play things right, then I can build an empire. In 2021, I didn't really have an empire. In 2025, I can confidently say that there's many entrepreneurs that are for sure far more successful than I am. But at the age of 25, I really don't know that many people in their 20s who have positioned themselves and have such a chokehold on an industry and also have positioned themselves so well for future exits in their investments. While not forgetting that info is the golden goose that lays the egg. I think that's where you need to really remember. Info is the golden goose that lays the eggs, that gives you the cash flow, that gives you the power, because listen, the person that has cash flow and is liquid, they're the ones with the power. It's not the people that have the craziest net worth, because net worth is very arbitrary. And I see a lot of people with a lot of net worth, but it's they can't really do much. They're not liquid. And by the way, not being liquid is a very rough place to be, when you're worth a lot of money, but you don't actually have any liquidity. Now listen, granted, it's very different for the multi-billionaires where their money is in companies that are publicly listed, they can loan out against that. But private companies, it's not as simple. So I guess what I'm really trying to get across with this is think bigger. I'm telling you right now, in the next 5 years, there are going to be 10 billionaires that have come from the info space. As in the info space is really where they had their big leg up in terms of cash flow. And that gave them the power to then go do whatever else they did with their, empire and their investments and, their expansion. So think bigger, and number two, play things smart, play things the right way, where you remember that info is the golden goose that lays the eggs, and then you take those eggs and then that, multiplies your empire manyfold. But just don't kill the golden goose. That's what a lot of people do, is they try to take the info business, which is the golden goose. It's the thing that gives you the cash flow to then go expand out, and they just let it die or like let it dwindle. And that actually leads me to the fourth thing that I always want you to remember in order to escape, the info prison. And that is that in the info space, I believe flexibility is one of the biggest components to being successful long-term. And I think that a lot of people just count themselves out of being in this info space for a long time because it makes them feel uncomfortable that, yeah, sometimes you will have to be flexible. And what I mean by that is you need to be able to You can't be dogmatic about an approach. So whether that's a price point, whether that's a way of getting customers, whether that's a way of actually delivering to your customers, the people who succeed long-term in the info space are the ones who are not dogmatic. If ads are working better, lean into ads. If organic content is working better, lean into organic. Even for me, I remember in 2018, everyone was focused on ads. And I looked at that and I was like, wait, but you guys are making all this revenue, but you're not actually making any cash flow. And that's why we play this game, to have the cash flow to then either live a great life and put into safe investments or retire, or to go bigger, to like take this cash flow and we're gonna fucking build an empire off this. And so I looked at that and I was like, you guys are all going this way. I'm gonna go this way in organic. And now I'm actually super bullish on ads. Now I will say, I think if you're running cold ads, you're gonna have it's gonna be a long day, it's rough. And let me actually clarify. Of course you wanna advertise to a cold audience, but I just mean, if you don't build some, even if it's a small niche organic personal brand, I think that's such a massive competitive advantage and it's something that people should focus on. Even if the numbers aren't as good as the paid, I think the small organic actually complements the paid massively and makes paid that much more attractive. So I'm actually super bullish on paid right now, and paid has been working incredibly well for us. But once again, if it stops working, then I'm happy to lean back into organic. It's like, I'm just not dogmatic at all. If this type of funnel works, I'll use this type of funnel. If this type of thing works, I'll use this type of thing. Like for me, I'm just not married to any specific way of doing things. For me, it's just like, what works and how do we make sure that this company continues to grow and grow? And also I like that because sometimes it challenges me. Like even recently, we've been doing live events and I've never done live events before. And we started doing it this year. It's been working incredibly well. And I really just like being tested in my abilities. And that's why I like the flexibility factor. And I've just seen a lot of info businesses die because they were so like, we have to do it this way, or I'm not willing. I even heard this a lot of times in, back in that era. People are like, I don't want to do organic. I don't want to be on the organic hamster wheel. And I'm just like, I'm going to try to say this in the most respectful way possible. Like, stop being a bitch. Like, let me say this once again. You have families that rely on you. You have people whose livelihood depends on you. Grow the fuck up. Like, just do what it takes. Like, there's so few people I see in this space that are just like, I'll do whatever it takes. Like, whatever, like, I think so few people realize, like, I have a fiduciary responsibility. Like, I am the leader of this team, of this company, for a reason. These people trust me. So like, well, I don't want to be in the organic hamster wheel, or, I don't want to post videos. It's like, grow the fuck up, just grow up. Or the people that are like, I don't want to run paid ads. It's like, okay, cool. Well, sure, just let your business die. So, I was very, very bullish on organic. And I still am very bullish on organic. But once again, I see I think once I started talking about it a little bit more, a lot of people went this way, and there's a lot of people talking about organic now. And once again, in the same way I saw that with 2018 with paid ads, I'm like, okay, well, maybe now we focus on organic. In the same way I see everyone focusing on organic. Listen, we haven't changed anything about organic. And I would say that in terms of our content strategy on organic, no one can beat us. Like the output that we have and the numbers that we hit and the audiences that we hit. And by the way, I'm trying to hit multiple audiences, whether that's super serious business owners here, or whether it's, people in the earlier stages on my main channel, or whether it's more an entertainment audience on my vlog channel in order to grow my physical product businesses. We have a very strong content strategy and we execute better than anyone else. So that's not to say that anything changes here. I'm just like, oh, all you guys are focused on this. Okay, maybe that means that there's more room here. So it's just this flexibility that you need to really develop as a skill. And then that also applies on the service delivery side of things. One thing that I said in the last video that I think it landed for them is, we're at a point right now where it's not enough just to sell information. You have to sell transformation. And it's not enough. Now, I want to make this clear. If you're in your early stages of getting into digital products, it's very different. You have to remember, when I make these videos, I'm speaking to people who are already making $250,000 a year up to, there's some people watching this that I know for a fact make $100 million a year, or at least have made $100 million a year. I know because they're clients of mine at 8FL. So I'm speaking to people who have developed their coaching companies, their e-learning businesses, info businesses, whatever you want to call it. So for you guys, I believe you have to create an ecosystem that gets people a transformation. It's not just about info. Now listen, that model can still work, but I'm just saying, like, even me in the info businesses, like, we've tried so many different things and we're like not dogmatic. Whatever gets our customers the best results, whether that's being so insane, batshit crazy. I don't know a single person that has ever done this at a $1,500 price point. In fact, even I think when there was sales, it was at like $1,000 price point. To have a one-on-one coach, like, Plus, as I said, the fact that 10 weekly coaching calls, I think it was even 15 weekly coaching calls at some point for the agency program. We had about like 7 or 8 or 9 different courses that they got, most of which weren't even taught by me. They were taught by the top experts in the world. Like, for example, outreach, you could learn from some like random outreach expert, or we got my friend who's literally the founder of Lemless. Like, that's the software that everyone uses to do outreach. That company is worth hundreds of millions. There's no amount of money you could pay someone like that. It's just a respect thing. And like, he teaches outreach. So anyways, all that to say, like, we've done some crazy stuff in order to make sure that our customers are getting the best results possible. And I've just never really cared what needs to be done. Like, for example, now we're building a lot more software and we're building a lot more tools. And I'm investing in software companies and paying licensing fees, or, even for example, in the agency program, each time I had to pay a licensing fee to one of my software companies, Flowzy. So I literally had to pay my own company. In full transparency, I have a co-founder in that business, but like I had to pay one of my companies in order to use this company. So I'm just not dogmatic. Whatever gets people the best results, that's what we'll do. And I think that flexibility is how you have longevity in the info space. Now, once you've taken heed of all of the things I've discussed, then you start thinking a little bit smarter, okay? And then you start thinking, okay, how can I only spend 5 to 10 hours a week on my info business? I tell people this and they're like baffled by it. They're like, how? And I'm like, well, you think about the amount of things that actually, you cannot replace me. I cannot replace myself creating these videos. Obviously, that's impossible. So content creation, for sure, it needs to be done. Now, there's content creation, like execution, and then there's scripting, frameworks, this, that. Listen, obviously anything here on the business channel, like I have to do this because it's such a nuanced conversation. But for me, it's easy. I either just talk off the top of my head, or I tell my team, hey, this is what we're going to talk about. Can you pull some of our SOPs from the company and just basically synthesize it into a presentation that then I could go ahead and just, speak off the dome with. So it's like, it doesn't really take that much time. But let's say, for example, the main channel, I literally voice note my team, or I voice note, transcribe it, send them. I'm like, here's what's on my mind. Here's what I want to talk about. Here are the talking points. You know the way I speak. This is the title. These are the things I want to talk about, and just synthesize it and put it into words. And then what we do is every Monday, we just have a 30-minute session where I go, I would not say that, or this is not my worldview, or this is not my belief, or this is not the way that I see this thing, or this is not the way that I view this topic. Now, I've been working with my team for so long at this point that they're literally like they're my second brain. Like, they know exactly the way that I think. But that's a system that I have to remove myself from. But once again, I've 80-90% removed myself from content creation. So it's like, I don't have to create content. So like, what is there really left for me to do? Now, listen, of course, this takes time, and you need the right systems in your business. You need the right SOPs in your business in order to make this a reality. This took me time to get here. But once you've done all the other things I mentioned, now it's time for you to really and just genuinely ask yourself, what are the things I can't remove myself? And also, what lies are you telling? And I was actually saying this to an info business that did $120 million last year, literally acquisition.com's largest revenue business in their portfolio last year, or at least so I've been told by them. Just to make things clear, I don't know. I've just been told this by the founders themselves. So you would think $120 million a year business in info. You would think they're so far removed from their business and everything's set up. It's like, no, they're so stressed. And that's one of the reasons they came to me to actually fix some things in the business and rejig some things around, because there's just certain things that need some tweaking and need some fixing, and such nice guys as well. Funnily enough, they were agency clients of mine 6 years ago. So it's like very full circle moment. But anyways, that's beside the point. The reason I say this is because like I was even telling them, like, why are you still involved with writing VSLs, writing webinars? Like I'm telling you right now, you are lying to yourself that no one else can do it. Like, especially with the amount of resources that you guys have and the sort of money that your business has pulled in the past, like you guys can do this. Like there's things where, for example, it's like, I could tell myself I'm lying by saying that no one else could film these videos. But like genuinely, unless I find a doppelganger that can speak like me, think like me, like I'm stuck to making these videos. I can't, there's no way around that. I can't lie and say, oh, you can, get that off your plate. It's like, no, I have to do these videos. Granted, sure. But like all the other stuff, like, does it have to be you? Or is there someone much smarter than you? Or can you train someone to do it? And as I said, there's a lot of things where I feel like a lot of people are so tied and they're like dogmatic about it. And it's like, I'm telling you right now, and I feel that's a very egotistical way to look at things. It's a very egotistical way to be like, only I can do it. Now, I do believe, for example, there's big key decisions in the businesses, like where are we going, what direction are we going in, where are we allocating our money, what are we focusing on, what are we not focusing on? Those decisions I make. But, I was telling these gentlemen, like writing a webinar, especially if you're doing webinars, quite often, like, do you really have to do that? So once you've worked on all the other things, then you can focus on, really thinking like a proper CEO. And all of this leads to the last point, which is I genuinely feel like right now is such a pivotal time in the info space. If you are successful in the info space, I say this jokingly, but like the info middle class, because I do find that like $20,000 to $150,000 a month in range in info, like that's kind of like the middle class. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, the solo creators or coaches, the people who are making like 10, 20, maybe even 30,000 a month, like they're killing it. Like that market's doing super well. The high end of the market is also doing super well. I'm finding it's more the middle of the market that's struggling quite badly at the moment. So I feel like if you're comfortable and you've ever needed a kick up the ass, like now is a perfect time, because generally this middle market isn't doing too well. And unless you get your shit together and commit to the right actions, you're gonna fall far behind, and you're gonna face the same fate that unfortunately a lot of info businesses face, which is just like dwindling and just shutting down. I've seen so many info businesses shut down, and it really saddens me, because I've said this again, I'll say it 100 times over. I believe this info space is so villainized unfairly. I believe this info space is treated like shit, looked at on shit, even though it's like, especially by like e-commerce people, and then, you ask them like, what product do you sell? And then they're like, yeah, I sell fast fashion drop shipping. And it's like, okay, like, cool, bro. Like, yeah, you're really making that much of an impact in the world. Like, nothing against that, but it's just like, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, a business is a business, as long as you're delivering the product to the customer and, everyone's happy and, you run your business ethically, that's fine. It's just like all these other industries villainizing info when I'm like, okay, look at the impact that you have compared to the impact that these businesses have on their customers. Like, for me, I just think it's such a beautiful space. I just want more people to do it right. I want more people to succeed. I want more people to flourish. And I want more people to think bigger, because as I said, I genuinely said this again, I'll say this many, many times over, there'll be 10 billionaires from this industry as long as people play it right, and as long as people keep everything I talked about today in the top of their mind. And if not, I wish you a very blessed week. I apologize for this crazy off the dome rant that I had today. And with that being said, as always, I'm watching from afar and I'm rooting for you.